Hi, this is Jenny,
Jess.
and this is a walk in the woods at midnight where we love to review and analyze horror films. And I would say, lately we've been on a streak of psychological horror films, which are some of my favorites. But we're trying to get a good balance. And so if you don't like, I think this one maybe was a little bit psychological. I don't know. This one was a good mix, psychological horror and kind of traditional horror.
I
So,
will say that this one had one of my favorite scenes of scariness in it, which I will say in the spoiler
okay, yeah,
part,
hold
because
that.
it had one of my favorite scary scenes where I went, whoa!
so we watched.
The
Go,
autopsy,
go.
the autopsy of Jane Doe, which my good friend Ryan Sace recommended to me last week. He suggested it to me.
Nice work, Ryan, because I I really like this. But before we, I guess, weigh in on it, should we give like a quick
Sure.
thought summary?
Yeah.
So I so I would say that the first, I don't know, like 45 minutes of this film I thought were almost like perfect. Like it was so gripping. But here's a kind of overview. So we see a murder. It opens with a murder scene. We don't see the murder. Opens with a murder scene in a couple's house. Was that me?
That was me. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I don't know how to turn it off on my computer.
Don't worry, we'll play with it. But there's so it opens with this murder scene. They see a couple in the living room, older couple who's murdered. There was a guy who was murdered, and then in the basement they find this very like beautiful angelic woman who is sort of like kind of like half buried in the floor, I would say.
Mhm.
And so they take her to the morgue, which is run by the glorious Brian Cox, who you guys might know from Succession and a billion other movies. He's someone who you could watch cook breakfast and it would
Yeah.
be a delight, you know? So it starred, or I'm sorry, it was run by Brian Cox and his son, whose name is escaping me, but that's okay. He's sort of an up and comer, I would say. Well, I'll find
Yeah.
out what it is later and write it in the comments. But it's this older kind of like older, I guess, what would you call it? Like a crematorium and
A family-run morgue and crematorium.
Yeah. And so anyway, cops wheel in this woman who was in the basement, half buried, and they start to examine her. They perform an autopsy on her. What they're finding is throughout this autopsy that things don't add up. They're seeing that the outside of her body is basically flawless and pristine, and it's not until they start to sort of understand the internal, like what's going on internally with her when they open her up. Nothing's making sense. There's all this weird stuff. She's got.
I don't know that you can go any further without spoiling it.
Okay.
But I will add one thing. At the murder scene, there's no sign of break-in. The female sheriff deputy said it looked like they were trying to break out.
Yes. Yes.
Which I thought was important.
That is important. Yes.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is, and I think this is going to be something that's interesting later to expand upon a little bit, is that there was a man in the house who was just sort of, I don't even know what he was. I think he was like a day worker or something, and he was it was something like he was a repair person or whatever. And it almost seemed like you sort of assume initially, maybe, that this is the guy who murdered this family and what maybe their extremely beautiful daughter. We're not sure. That was sort of what I was like, okay, this probably isn't the case, but this is sort of how it might really unfold in in a real situation that cops run across, perhaps. So things, I mean, I don't know how to even explain the rest of the movie without.
I don't think we can go into. I think spoilers have to start now because they wheel Jane Doe into the morgue, and that's when the action starts to happen. So I think spoilers have to start now because that's when the whole movie really starts, when the autopsy starts. And when my oh my god moment happened is when they start to do that. And it's a morgue, so there's in the file cabinets or whatever they are,
the dead body file cabinets.
The dead body file cabinets, they've already been working on people in there, and so there's some of that going on, but it's a family run business, and the son has plans. He wants to go out with his girlfriend, but the cops wheel in this Jane Doe, and
he doesn't want to leave his dad.
Doesn't want to leave his dad late at night, and so he says to the girlfriend, I'll meet you later." And so he goes back to help. That seems to be
a kind of a pattern too.
Yeah,
like he's blowing her off or whatever in order to help his dad with his family business, blah blah blah. And in fact, he has plans to not continue that tradition of kind of like running this morgue. He has some plans with his girlfriend about just kind of leaving.
Yeah.
And he seems to be having trouble. He hasn't told his father. It's, he's kind of thinking about this as a kind of betrayal.
Right. So spoilers start, where's my pen? 7:30. We'll say 7:30.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So spoilers. So they wheel her in, and okay, go for it. What are they first? Everything about her is odd. Like she seems flawless and supple skin, like she had just been deceased. But her ankles and wrists are completely disintegrated and broken and fractured, but no signs of it from outside.
Right. And I would also like to point out, at least what I always sort of do, just as a kind of like a female viewer of anything like this, when I see a woman who has, like on TV or in a film, who has been killed, I always kind of look to see if she is being sexualized as a dead person.
Okay.
And I think that with this one, I think absolutely, but it's more complicated than that. So don't shut it off if you're someone like me who is like, ew, they're sexualizing a dead woman again. But,
wow, I didn't pick up on that at all.
Yeah, she was just so perfect. When she was in that pit, she was splayed out, and there, she was like, you could see her boobs, you can see her breasts, you can see her, and like you said, even just subtle things, like you use the word supple to describe her body. That's sort of not, and there's nothing screwed up about that. The film made it that way, I think,
To me, she
just looked dead to you.
She just looked dead to me, and they examined her, and it looked like when they examined her it looked like that she had been sexually assaulted, um, like cut up almost.
Yeah, yeah. They found a couple of things after the wrists and the ankles. They found the tongue, I
Tongue
think.
had been cut out.
Yeah,
A molar had been removed.
yep,
Um, it, but the weird thing to me was that blood came out of her too, and so um, sh- this was not an old. To me, that suggested to me that she was like recently dead, like a day,
yeah,
um, and uh, not not there for a long time, which buried in the basement would suggest to me
yeah.
somebody was trying to hide something for years and years. Blood started to come out of her nose. Ew, a fly came out of her nose too, which was really gross.
Yeah, yeah. And then when they had cut that
Hmm.
initial, when they were opening her up and they cut that sort of like Y into her, and she just bled as though she were alive.
Yeah.
Um, so that was, yeah, I mean, that was really, that was really sort of like another sign where you're going like, this is crazy. And what's weird to me also is that throughout the whole thing, the dad who has seen it all or claims he's seen it all is not, he's sort of like explaining all of these things away, you know, like her eyes, like she doesn't have, they're just like gray. They're in, I
Right.
mean, like no pupil gray, you
Right.
know? Yeah. So I think that, things were definitely going sideways as they
And
had
they
moved.
found a thread, and then they opened her up, and her lungs were like completely blackened,
Charred. Yeah.
charred, blackened, and they found a lotus flower in her stomach, and then they found this fabric in her that had Roman numerals on it and some other writing on it that they couldn't quite decipher. Meanwhile, there's all kinds of weird noises going on in the crematorium. That
Yes.
starts just about then.
Yes. And I think also we're getting some foreshadowing from the radio that
Yeah, the
keeps
radio
turning
is,
on.
yeah. It says there's a storm coming, that you're not going anywhere. There's a big storm brewing, and um, which is weird because the following day, when everything's all cleared up, it says today's the fourth day in a row of sunny weather.
Yeah.
It's beautiful out again, and it's a beautiful day when in the aftermath of whatever happened, and everything's fine. So whatever's going on the radio is directly related to what's ever happening in that morgue, where he's going,
Yeah.
it's 3.5 inches of rain tonight, and all the power goes out, and
Yep, exactly. And do you notice also what the radio keeps that song?
that's, yes, that's in my head right now still.
So yeah, and it's what is I don't know what it's called, but it's "Let the Sun Shine In,
Yeah.
Baby with a Grin." Yeah, yeah. And do you recall? Like, did you make that connection with the fact that the father? We should also mention that the although if you're still in this, you probably have already seen the movie. But either way, um, just a bit earlier in the film, the father, that you learn that he's lost his wife,
Hmm.
and it's the boy's mother, and so I don't think he ever says her name. I think he calls her Sunshine.
Yeah, because she was always bright and sunny.
Yeah.
I
However,
did put that together with the song,
yeah,
which I
and
thought
I
was
mean,
weird.
super weird. And then she also killed herself, right?
Yeah,
So how is she always bright and sunny if you know what I mean? Like, did she just freak out one day and kill herself? Do you know what I mean?
I do. Yeah,
That's messed up.
that was weird.
Yes. And I think do you want me to kind of to give you sort of my kind of like my interpretation of this, or do you want to?
Of which part?
The whole thing.
Um,
Let's hold on that.
okay, yeah, let's delve into the file cabinets that come alive.
Yes, let's do that.
The file cabinets, the lights go out, and all of a sudden the file cabinets open, and they are now running scared from. Now the woman stays on with her internal organs all opened up. They the file cabinets all come alive and are now chasing these guys down to try and kill them. And there were 3 in the file cabinets: one burn victim, one gunshot wound, and then one cyanide. Wait, no, cyanide gunshot wound guy, fire guy, and then I can't remember what the woman died of. But they all come alive and are chasing these guys throughout the whole morgue.
Yeah.
Which I think doubles as their house, which is really creepy.
No.
And so that's a good bit of the film is in the dark. And I need to start watching these movies at night, because during the day I do miss some of these things because of the daylight that happen, and some of these things happen during the dark, and so I can't quite see them. But I saw enough of what was going on that these guys are coming after him and attacking them in all different places. And so it's very much like a ghost story or the dead come alive story. Meanwhile, this woman is still on the table. But before that happened, that everything went south, is when this was my oh my God moment, when they peeled open her skin and flipped it open, and that what was on the piece of tapestry that was in her, I don't know, intestine,
Yeah,
was on her skin. And I was like, oh,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
unbelievable. That really
Tattooed
freaked me
almost,
out.
or I don't, imprinted somehow on the inside of her skin.
On the inside of her skin, that really freaked me out. Then I knew that this was going to be a really good movie.
Yeah. Yes, I agree.
So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew before you analyze that they were running from the zombies of death that came alive, and this woman stayed there. They tried to set her on fire; she wouldn't burn. They were running, all around, and it became a very much a dead come to life type story.
Yeah.
But yeah, now I would like, and there was lots of good jump scares, but that totally freaked me out when they opened up her skin, and there was the what was on the tapestry that she had swallowed
with her tooth in it.
With her tooth in it that they had pulled from her mouth. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's like, and throughout that the autopsy, I think, before the dead come alive, and it's just getting weirder and weirder. The son is getting very curious about the circumstances around the death.
Right.
He's kind of like, maybe it was this, maybe it was that, and the dad was sort of like, don't speculate. Like, this is science. Like, you can't read into all of this stuff, a fact is a fact.
That's not our job.
That's not our job. Yeah. And the flower, was it a lotus? It was something
it was a lotus flower.
That was a flower from up north.
Yeah, it was a lotus flower from up north.
Okay,
The son put it together that she was from up north because she had peat under her nails, and only peat. There wasn't peat down here in Virginia because she was from Grantham. They were in Grantham, Virginia. There was no peat naturally. It's only up north naturally. So they folded the tapestry together and read the Bible verse, and that's when they discovered she was a witch. And that
or that she was treated as a witch.
Treated as a witch, right?
Yeah.
Because
And
then,
then,
yeah.
yeah. So anytime, I mean, actually, so for me, a lot of it was, it's so weird. Like I am so obsessive that I like went online and looked at Pete because I was like, they're talking about Pete as though it's incredibly rare. And I guess it turns out that it is. It's in only like 3% of the world or something. This is a quick search that I did. So I was like, okay, maybe. I don't know how they would just naturally know that fun fact because I didn't know that,
Well,
but it's
I
true.
know I can only get it at the local hardware store.
That's good to know. So yeah, maybe I was.
Yeah, it's like peat from Ireland or something that I can get it, or maybe they grow peat up. Yeah, it is way rare.
Yeah. I didn't know that. So yeah, that was I found that out, and then what's the other the I didn't look up the flower. Um, oh, I looked this up because I was kind of like there were I was like again with the sexualized body or what I thought was a sort of a sexualized way of showing the woman. I was like, do your I mean this is kind of gross, but do your nipples get or stay hard after you die? Because that made me kind of go like this, like this is a little sexualized. Is this true? And I found mixed things on this. Is it rigor mortis? Is it like, if you die when you're cold, your muscles are contracted, or no, that's a myth, or it's. So I don't. That
Well,
was inconclusive.
keep in mind that was a real actress, and she was probably freezing in that
Absolutely. But
studio.
it's also, I know, but it's also like it's also like something that as a viewer you can't miss because it's sort of like,
Well, yeah.
they're always
Well,
like in the shot a lot of the time.
let me ask you this question:
Yeah.
How could they? How could they have made it not sexualized?
So I think that's a good question. Um,
I mean, because you're dealing with a dead female on a on a in a
on a,
morgue.
I
So she's going, this is just me asking you the question. She's going to be naked, right? And she was
right.
discovered naked. Okay, maybe she could have been discovered in a dress. Okay. I can see that. But in the morgue, she is going to be naked, right?
She is, but why choose an actress who has like a super hot bod? Do you know what I mean? If it's not
Oh,
for a little bit of
okay.
eye candy. And I think we're so used to seeing only like incredibly flawless women, in like media that we just take it for granted that that's just how it goes. However, I'm not going to pan the movie for that because I feel like in this case, it kind of maybe serves a purpose or a
Okay.
larger purpose.
Okay, I see that. All right.
So I think that the fact that so what can I say? So I did a kind of a lot of this was from a female perspective and
Good.
the way, yeah, so just to kind of give that, I mean, when it's kind of bizarre. I mean, when they began their autopsy on her, um, I actually sort of was I kind of like cried a little bit because the fact that this woman was so mutilated and she was in such a kind of like sterile atmosphere and things kept getting weirder and weirder and then you find out that this is in fact the way that people treated women when they were just being women,
Thought to be witches?
thought to be witches.
Yeah, and they were because they were a little different. They were thought to be witches, and they treated her that way.
Yeah, I mean, and tortured, and
Yeah.
and I think that that's I think a kind of a big part of this film. I think that discovering all those things and seeing all those things, it just, that to me was very, it wasn't necessarily horrifying, but it did kind of ramp up my anxiety and kind of go, if I was born then, very probably with my interests and the way that I am and I act, that very well could have been me or any other woman I know.
Yeah.
And so I think, though, that it wasn't just purely a feminist film of like, don't screw with women because we'll come get you. Like, I don't think it was that easy. I think that it was like, the dad was very kind of closed off and masculine. I think he was sort of like how my dad was, actually. Like, my dad was Italian. He was very like a traditionalist, and the dad calls himself a traditionalist when he has the bell tied on the toe of like the dead guy, like in the file cabinet.
Right.
He calls himself a traditionalist there. And he also, like, the fact that he always thought his wife was like this sunny 1950s housewife when clearly she was miserable enough to kill herself.
Right. Yeah. He missed that quite.
He missed
easily.
It so bad.
Yeah.
Right. And the fact that he just assumes that his son is going to take on this morgue after, he retires or dies, he just assumes it because it's always been that way throughout the whole like family line.
Yeah.
And I noticed too that when like the girlfriend, I feel like was another, like she was another woman in the movie. There was a female police officer. There was the dead half of the couple who got murdered. And then there was the girlfriend. And was that it? I mean, aside from the dead girl, I think I already said her. But yeah. Anyway, and there weren't a ton of men either. This was a small cast. But the girlfriend was very interested in the work that her boyfriend was doing. The son is her boyfriend. She was very interested in like what he was doing for a living, and the way he kind of treated her was kind of like
the boyfriend or the father.
The boyfriend was telling the girlfriend when she first met him at work. Like, she was like, "I want to see what you do. I want to see what you do all day, how you work." And so he was kind of like a little bit like, this is not the place for you. Like, you don't want to see this. You can't unsee this. Like, I'm a man, so it's easy for me. He doesn't say that. I mean, she's clearly like, she's kind of tough. I mean, it doesn't seem like she's very, bird-like or.
Let me say something from the man's perspective.
Say, yes.
He's embarrassed because he's working with dead bodies all day. He doesn't like the job. He wants to get out of the job, and he's embarrassed by what he does for a living. He's dealing with dead bodies all the time. They're really creepy. The first woman has her face all stitched up. Her mouth is all stitched shut. Second one doesn't have a face. Third one's a dead, burnt up body. He doesn't want his girlfriend seeing all that. He doesn't want her to see that's what he does. She works in a bookstore. She deals with la-di-da books, and she gets to have a fun time saying, here's the latest Winnie the Pooh. So he doesn't want her to see that stuff. He doesn't want her to see that that's what he deals with. He deals with death every day.
Yeah, and it may be creepy or whatever. That's helpful.
Maybe she's tough as nails, but he doesn't want her to know that this is what he's got his hands in every day. And then he comes home and says, "Sweetie, let's have a drink and a kiss." And so, that's where I come. That's where I get what he said.
That's incredibly plausible. I think you're right. I mean, I thank you for letting me that perspective. The dad, I think, is weird about it. He's sort of like, let her see. And then he like fucks with her.
Yeah, he
He
does.
rings the tow bell,
Right.
like on like one of the dead people.
He wants to
So
mess with her.
he wants to mess with her, and he wants to scare her, and he's, anyway, I think that but I think you're right. I think that the boyfriend just doesn't want to be seen as like a creepy
Yeah.
weirdo. Yeah, that's
Right.
good. Yeah, and so, but she does try to get the son to leave and go on this date that he had promised her they would go on, and he ultimately is like, "No, I got to stay with my dad. I'm really sorry." She comes back later, and
That surprised me. That scene surprised me. I did not. That was a good scene because
yeah,
I didn't see that coming.
no,
That's a
I
good
know,
movie when you don't see that coming.
yeah, and the dad was, I mean, he inadvertently
Yeah.
did it, but I think it's still maybe a little telling. I don't know. We'll leave that up for debate. But I think that it's kind of like these old roles that men have to play, and these old fashioned roles that women have to play are incredibly poisonous.
Mm.
Um, I think that the father was a really broken man who hid behind this masculinity, and he
Mhm.
didn't, he probably was scared to see that his wife was upset, because maybe that would reflect poorly on him as a man. And maybe because he was a man, he wanted to believe, this old fashioned man, he wanted to believe that his wife was perky and sunny and, everything that she should be. Um, I think that the fact that the wife had killed herself was really telling. That was toxic.
Yeah.
Old roles. I don't think it was about men necessarily being assholes or whatever. I think it was more about this old idea of like, why do we have these gender roles
Mm.
really? And I don't know. I mean, on top of it, just I don't know. That's kind of what occurred
Well,
to
and the son
me.
wanted to escape that
He
gender
did.
role type
Right.
of situation.
Exactly.
He wanted to
Yeah.
carve out his own life, escaping that gender role situation.
Yeah.
He didn't want to have it assigned to him. He wanted something different.
Exactly. And he keeps kind of saying to his dad, is like, shit's getting weirder and weirder. I think we need to leave. I think we need to go. We need to go, because they're sort of like opening up this Pandora's box. He's kind of seeing it. He feels trapped there to help his dad. And
Hmm.
he's kind of trying to go take over and go like, Dad, we got to get out of here. Like, this isn't right. This isn't the thing to do,
Yeah.
And it also makes the dad blind throughout, I think, the autopsy to a lot of this weird stuff going on, because he's dealing with science and hard fact. And, I'm not going to get emotional, and I'm not going to think about necessarily, what the person might have felt as she was going through this, but what, like kind of what happened, but what is indicating that something happened. I don't know. Maybe that's a stretch, but
He does eventually sacrifice himself for his son
he does. Yeah,
at the end.
he does. Yeah, yeah.
That doesn't save his son, but he sacrifices himself
He
for his
does it
son.
nonetheless. Right, right.
Yeah.
It's
So,
true. I don't know that that's really necessarily a break, even though it was very touching. I think it wasn't a break from an old, male
okay.
gender role.
Yeah.
I don't
We're
know.
willing to
Yeah,
save yourself. Well,
you sacrifice yourself for your family.
yeah.
I don't know. It seems manly. Not that I think he should have been like, no, take my son. Like, and then she's like, oh, okay, everything's fine then. But yeah, I think that the woman, the witch, the body represented like this old poisonous world,
Mm.
for men and women, and making, because I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. That's kind of what I see. And I see the fact that she was sort of, sexual or sexy is she's a sort of she's sort of what I think is like, this is how a woman should look.
Ah, okay. Instead of picking some old crone out of the ground, they picked this sexy young woman out of the ground.
Right.
Okay.
So that's kind of my reading. I don't know. I mean, I don't, I could easily probably be talked out of it, but
Well, I'm
I
not going to talk
felt
you out
like
of it. I'm not. No, I think your thoughts are your thoughts, and it makes sense. It makes a
yeah,
lot of
but
sense.
I like though that how you saw something, you read something different into that scene about the guy and his girlfriend. I think I did get that wrong.
Mm.
And I think you got it right.
Well,
And it would align with his character.
yeah.
So,
I don't know. Well,
yeah,
there's two different interpretations to everything, I guess.
probably.
That's why there's two of us watching these movies. We bring two. That's what I like about this is we bring two different perspectives to it, and
Yeah.
and it really helps.
I think so too.
So, bottom line, did you enjoy it, and would you recommend it?
I did enjoy it. I did. I think that it was, I would say, sufficiently scary. I have a deep love for, like, discovering things through, I don't know, autopsy. I don't know, like getting closer to some truth or something
Mhm.
is always like kind of exciting to me. And I just think it was a really strong movie. And I think it had a lot to say.
I
I
think
don't
so
know.
too. Yeah, I love this movie, and I highly recommend it. Especially the mystery solving of what was in her and how they finally solved it,
Yeah.
and how they put the pieces together, and whether they liked it or not, they were the ones putting the pieces together. When they say that's up to the police, it's not our job. We're just supposed to take the body apart and report our findings, and the police solve it. They were the ones that were discovering what was going on, and they were putting the facts together and what they discovered. And I thought this was a great film. I really liked it.
Yeah, I did too. Who recommended this? Who was your friend?
Ryan Sace, my buddy Ryan Sace.
Ryan. Great pick.
Good job, Ryan.
Good job.
Okay, well, good. Please leave your comments for us, and please subscribe, leave us a like, and we're always happy to take your recommendations on other movies. And this has been A Walk in the Woods at Midnight. We appreciate your watching. And as usual, peace and love. Peace and love. Thank you for watching.